All right, watercolorist, I'm going to take a minute and turn my volume down. I tend to get real high. This is what I want to do. I want to introduce you to some basically wet washes combined with other washes. I'm going to take some dark color. Now, this happens to be a brown. I'm adding, so you experiment here with your different, there's some blue. Now, see, I've got a lot of pigment here, but the paper itself is going to be dry. But I'm bringing water and pigment here. Now I'm going to let this rinse, run at my discretion. And this is where you want to experiment. See, I can leave some dry places. I'm leaving some dry places. I can add colors. This I'm going to work pretty much neutral. They're all dancing. Now I do have this board slightly tilted so that gravity will be my friend. I can do several things here, so watch, and you don't necessarily need to paint along right now. I can continue this water. I can mist the paper and let the color drain where the water, see where the water hit the paper. Here's, let me make that a little darker for you. Now here, I'm going to give it a little guidance. It needs a little more sprinkle. That, I can do this. This is a little dry brush right here. Little dry brush. I can do that top. I can do this bottom. I'm not worried about these drips. I can leave that alone. Let it play with it. Let it dry a little bit, and I will in a minute to make some blossoms. Dry brush, dry paper. Add some over here. There's no reason I can't add water. Let this drip down into here. See what I did? Now, as this dries, there's still more I can do. I'm going to add, actually, yes, I'm going to pause this for a second, let it get a little drier, and then I'm going to show you some more ways to make texture. That's a little dark. Matter of fact, I had that blue in there. I don't have any of it over here. It doesn't matter what blue. I mean, this is a blue. See me diddling around, which is fun, and that's what I want you to do. Diddle around, but don't go. You're going to make a mess, but it's planned random. It's a planned mess. So, all right, let me go back to what I was saying. I'm going to pause this a minute, blow dry it. Now, let's see. I'm going to put salt on part of it. I'm going to try to blossom part of it. And I'm going to splatter either color or water on it. Here's the deal. It needs to be just right for any of these to work. So here's the salt. It's generally when the sheen leaves the paper. That's not always easy to know. It's going to take that a few minutes to work. So in the meantime, got my brush. I'm going to drop some water in here. And see, that's too much. Well, let's leave it and see what happens. What I want to do is get, I call them blossoms. Some people call it a cauliflower. That doesn't really matter. So I'm just dropping beads of water in here. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna let that dry. Look, ooh, that's beautiful. Let me hold that closer. Look at that. Now you can see the reflections where it's wet or not, or too wet. I don't know yet about the salt. I won't know for a few minutes. I do know that if the blossom was going to work, it would have worked. So I might have gone in while it was too wet. Let's try some over here. So what you're going to want to do is get just scrap paper, not bad paper, good quality student grade paper, and play with these. I'm going to do several of them for you to see, but look, watching paint dry. Now, while I'm doing this, I can come up here and I can, whoops, too much paint on my brush. I can add little trees or the impression of. If I wanted to, I could add a little lighthouse up here. Now remember, we're working wet and we're working loose. You know what, for fun, I'm going to turn this upside down. Look at that. I'm also going to add, I've just added a little green because I'm not really sticking with the color scheme here. But if I add now, this is just a very little paint. I can turn it that way. All right, turn it that way. Because I've put that green over there, I'm going to put some of it up here. Where you have it once, put it in. That's just, the more you study with me, you're going to hear me say that over and over. Where you have it once, put it again. If you have a paring knife or a scraper, you can scrape into this. Now I'm making this look a lot easier than it is actually. I'm gonna lower the camera, you can see it better. There you go. Is that better? If I use the sharp end and I just run down in here, this paint is going to follow that indentation. Now, what I want you to enjoy this and doodle this, but I'm going to caution you about just coming in and just throwing paper around and saying, see what this will do. You can do that without any guidance. So we've used the salt, which has not worked. So I'm going to add more to it. All righty, and see if it will work anywhere. Again, the paper may be too wet, may be too dry. I'm going to add a drop, some more droplets to see if I get a blossom. Or, now these are three: salt, droplets, or I can mist it. And you can see where the mist will make its own watermarks. You can try them all together. I'm leveling this out a little bit. All right, now that I've done. So take a few minutes and do some of these. There's a lot that we can do with it. We can still dry brush in places. See how I'm closing that if you want. So play with that a minute. And I'm going to take this off of my board. We'll do a different one in a different color scheme. Now remember, this is learning how to work wet on dry paper. We did not wet the paper. We brought all of it over. All right, play with that just for a minute. I'm going to take this off the board. I neglected here. Look what I'm working on. I'm working on a board. So all of this paper is attached to a gum adhesive here. So there's no waffling or buckling. When you learn, these can be rather expensive. It really doesn't matter. Just practice on a sheet. If you want a nice border or you want to tape it down to the board, do that. And sort of figure out what works for you at any given time. So here's that one that we did. Now let's do one now that looks like, I'm going to use the greens and maybe put a cloud in, do that sort of thing using the very same techniques. Let's start a different one. Now, still, paper's dry, brush is damp, but I'm going to wet my brush and I'm going to bring a yellow green. You can mix it if you have some. Well, see, I mixed it and I got some yellow and some green. There we go. Remember now, step 2, I'm using my brush to sort of distribute this. I don't have to leave these gaps. I can make it a flat wash through here. I'm going to add a different green. Wow, that's pretty in there. I like that. It's a blue green. And so I'm going to add more. Now see, I've got the top of the brush up here in the dry part. Now I'm going to go into a darker green. Whoop, that was a drip I didn't mean to make, and that happens. So let's leave it. Let me go in with a drier brush. There we go. Run that across here. Now I'm going to do the same thing up here. See, dry paper. And I'm going to smush this around a little bit. See how I did that? I'm going to get my dry brush here. Do the same thing. Now I can use the brush. But for right now, in this particular exercise, we'll do that. I'm going to rinse my brush, dried my brush, and I'm pulling this out, sort of like erasing. I did not do that in the first one, but just for fun, just to show you another something different. Now let's see if this is dry enough. We're going to put some salt in this area. There you go. And we'll see how that works. Remember, that's going to take a minute. We're going to try to get blossoms here, but I think that's still too wet. This is trial and error. If it works, that's great. If it doesn't work, you've lost nothing. And I might need to dry that. Well, no, that's kind of, can you see where I'm getting that little texture? Now I'm working relatively small here. Let's see if we can get bigger there. And I am holding the paper flatter too. I've jiggled the table so the camera's a little crazy. See there? Now, because I have this blue up here, I'm going to use this same blue and put some of that down here just to distribute that color. See what I'm doing? Still, oh, wow, that's pretty too. Woo, don't you love it? There you go. The salt is going to work in here. The blossom's not going to work in there, and it's too soon to mist that. So in the meantime, I'm going to pause for a minute, blow dry this. You don't need to watch me blow dry a piece of paper. Now let's see if I take my mister and hit this a lick. I'm going to move that one. Well, that was not what I intended. However, it is cool. That's cool. So maybe, since I kind of like it like that, I'm going to tilt it a little bit. And because that's not all on one side, I'm going to come back and mist in here. Oops, too much, too little. So when you start this, too much, too little, you're practicing. I'm going to see if, and I might not can, if I can encourage that. Now, when I say goof around and I'm doing this, I've done it before, so I am goofing around here with educated guesses. I have enough experience that I can probably do that. I like that. And I'm sort of thinking of that as grass. I'm going to put some of that brown from the first one in here. Nice and rich. Put a little more over here. Now, the reason I'm doing this, pure and simple, is because I want to. I think the brown would look nice, so I'm going to try some. If it doesn't, we'll let it dry and do a different piece of paper altogether. So we're not going to lose any sleep over any of this. I'm going to blow dry this completely and add some up here. And then if we have time, we'll do one more. Okay, let me move all of this. I took it off the board. This is dry, and I have taken it off the pad. I don't need gravity to be my friend right now. I have this just laying flat, and I'm going to come in with the tip of my brush. Now, this is a size 16, which might scare you to death. If you want to change to a smaller brush, this is a 12. We're just going to use the tip, but I would always encourage you to use the biggest brush you can at any minute. So the bigger the shape, the bigger the brush. This is a good brush. This is the King Art. I can do with this tip what I can do with this because I've practiced it. I take care of the brushes. So I'm going to go with that one. I'm going to get into my yellow and green that's just sort of mixed here on the palette. And I'm going to draw, whoops, not nearly enough pigment on there. Actually, I might have too much. Dry paper, slightly damp brush. Now, to do this, let me show you how I'm doing this. But I'm doing it on a small scale. I'm going to use some of this. I've drawn a line. Now, this does take practice if you're doing it bigger, but we're not. It's just swishing side to side. And I will teach you how to do that, but so that you get the general gist of what I'm doing, that's it. And it's more of a scribble than anything else. There you go. Now I can do another. Now you're going, I don't know how to paint a tree. You don't need to know how to paint a tree. Your brain has already told you that's a tree. If I want to get more specific, I can add a brown trunk. And I can just bring it below this line, which moves it, of course, in front of us. It can be a dead tree or just a limmy having limbs, one having limbs. See how I'm doing that? Now, I am touching this paper so lightly that my hand's basically jiggling and not all of it is touching the paper. And I'm going to move this closer in a minute. And I can do this all the way along. And I'll leave you to do that. I'm going to bring this one lower. And I can do that across the paper. I'm going to show you one more thing here. I'm going to get the green. And if I want to add greenery over here, this is dry. I've just added a line here of the greenery. I have a little divot here I'm not real sure what to do with, so I think I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to fancy that up just to see how I just put a broken line. If I want this to grow, I have a damp brush. I'm putting the tip, so the water's here in the pigment, and that back part of my brush is wetting the paper, so that edge will soften, and that will grow up into the water. We'll get more into the, well, here, since I didn't mean for that to happen, and it did happen. There you go. We can add more. So just have fun. Have fun with these little sketches. It is just an exquisite practice for learning how to merge all these colors, which ones work and which ones don't. Now, we've done these two. I'm going to use the same technique and I'm going to do a couple of more, but I'm going to be quiet and just let you watch because there's nothing new to tell you. All right, now, I know that was a little long. When you work on these and you kind of like them and they're really pretty cool, it's important to use enough water so your colors can stay clean. People are going to look at it and you're going to show it to them and be proud of yourself, and then they're going to say, what is this supposed to be? General public is real good about that, and you can say nothing. I was just trying to blend colors. They can say, it looks like a sunset to me, and you say, good, thank you. But we're not trying to make anything in particular. We're just here blending colors. All right, let's look at these. You watched me do some of these, and a caution. In this one, when your brain starts to think flower, and it will, because left brain wants there to be an image, we're not painting flowers. Turn it upside down, smush it, do something, but try to leave an image out of this, because then you get distracted from the exercise, which has nothing to do with subject matter. So here's this one, this way, and it's all pretty cool. I want you to remember, though, I've done this before. There's that one. Watch me do that. Okay. We did that one together. Any way you want to do it. That one together. And of course, your brain sees trees, so you start thinking landscape. But the whole point of this is to see how they all work together. Here I used the scraper, I used the mister, I used everything I showed you, and my brain started thinking about, actually, let me show you. I started it that way. Turned it this way, and immediately my brain wanted to think tree. When that happens, please don't try to paint a tree. All we're doing is getting these colors to blend. So if you were in school for this, I'm going to add this. If you were in school and you turned these in for a grade, if I could tell that there was much of a subject matter, I'd probably ask you to redo it. All we're doing, dry paper, wet brush, is blend colors. What if I put this in here? What if I put this in here? Go back to this one. So what if I come in here now that it's drier and I put purple in there? What happens? What happens if I run purple down here? And some of them you may go, oh, that's pretty cool. But where you have that purple once, put it again so I can diddle on in here. But I won't see. Now I'm going, oh no, I ruined my flower. No, flower. I can go back in here since I've done that. And we can drop water in it. I can also now, I've got water on the brush. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm just going to flip water on here, which is just a different way of adding droplets. See what happens. Okay? So do that, do several of them. We will start turning them into something, but the main thing you need to learn first is to, see, these are clean, just mix color. Now, underneath here, underneath somewhere on this screen, there is a subscribe button. I want you to do that. I'm going to do more of these. I'm going to conform them more. They will turn into little scenes. But you won't be able to do that until you have practiced some of this. And it's going to take a while. So subscribe to me, put comments under there, get in touch with me, and we will do a lot more of this later. So go make a mess.